At the start of episode 4, we find Tabitha inside an ambulance that's stuck because a fallen tree blocks their path. The atmosphere is tense, and the ambulance team is nervous, with a police officer also in the vehicle looking around in surprise at the empty road, not a single car in sight. They try to contact headquarters, but there's no response. Curious, Tabitha steps out to investigate, but the officers quickly send her back inside. Deciding it's best to turn around, they prepare to head back. Meanwhile, back in town, Ethan, a young boy, hears a phone ringing. When he answers, a boy named Thomas speaks to him, telling him that his mom is in the ambulance and on her way. Jim arrives and notices Ethan on the phone, snatching it away and angrily warning Thomas not to frighten his son. Frustrated, Jim breaks the phone. Julie then arrives, and Jim turns to Ethan to ask what the caller had said. Ethan explains that Thomas told him their mom was being transported in the ambulance. In the colony house, we see a different scene unfolding. A dead crow has crashed through a window, lying there with broken glass around it, but no one is willing to touch it. A girl scolds Tilly, accusing the elderly woman of being obsessed with tarot cards and of asking strange questions. Tilly apologizes, and Donna, who is also present, steps in to calm the situation. They remind each other not to assign blame. Next, we see Fatima with Muriel, who is checking on her and reassuring her that she's perfectly fine, with nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, Victor arrives at Sarah's house carrying a suitcase. He begins reminiscing about his childhood, describing how he and his sister used to play in that very house. Whenever they felt scared, they'd go down to the basement, build a small tent, and stay there together for comfort. Tabitha is still in the ambulance as night falls. The driver suggests taking a left turn, but Tabitha urges him to keep going straight, mentioning there's a town up ahead with many people who can help them. The driver follows her directions, continuing toward the town. Meanwhile, Boyd confronts Randall, asking why he's there instead of inside the station, as instructed. Boyd says, "I told you to go inside while I stay here to watch the monsters." Randall retorts, "What's it to you where I stay? I'm here to keep an eye on those monsters." Randall insists, "I know where they come from and how many there are. I've got sharper eyes than you." In the forest, we see Christy, Kenny, and Jade. It's now nighttime, and Christy's leg still hurts from her injury. Kenny reassures her, saying, "Don't worry, as soon as morning comes, we'll leave." They share a few tender moments, with Kenny mentioning how much he still misses his mom. Jade, who's been sleeping nearby, wakes up and tells them to save their conversation for the morning. Since he was enjoying a good sleep, Kenny apologizes for interrupting his sleep. Then, Jade shares with Kenny that he also liked his mom. He brings out a diary that once belonged to her, saying he keeps it close as a reminder. He hands the diary to Christy, who starts reading through it. Meanwhile, Victor and Sarah are in a basement where he has set up a small tent. Sitting inside, he tells Sarah about a suitcase he found under a tree, explaining he has been collecting items in it. He begins to tell her a story from his childhood, describing an unsettling experience in this town. Victor explains that when he was a child, an incident happened in the town. There was an accident. I was at home, but when I woke up and went outside, I didn't see anyone alive. The streets were full of bodies. But then, I saw one boy there, wearing a white shirt. That boy eventually became my friend, and from then on, I've been living in this town." He adds that the boy advised him to collect important belongings from the dead, as they might be useful later. Following this advice, Victor kept various items, a watch from one person, a cigarette box from another. These items have remained with him all these years. Suddenly, he realizes one of the objects is missing but isn't sure which. After a moment, he remembers it was a doll named Christopher, carried by one of the deceased men. The doll, originally meant for entertainment, had frightened him one night when he saw it move oddly. In a moment of panic, he had tried to escape the tent. Sarah reassures Victor, saying, "Don't worry, I'm here with you. I'm the one who's usually the most scared in this town, but you don't need to be afraid." Her words calm him down somewhat. Meanwhile, an ambulance carrying Tabitha makes its way into the town. She begins shouting, trying to get someone to stop the vehicle, but no one does. Boyd, Randall, and others in their homes notice the ambulance. Ethan points out that, just as Thomas had predicted, the ambulance has arrived. Ethan suspects his mom might be inside the ambulance, so he steps outside, with everyone else following. Tabitha pleads for them to stop the ambulance, but they ignore her. A police officer holds up handcuffs, intending to detain Tabitha. Meanwhile, the ambulance crew encounters what looks like a corpse. Tabitha insists it's not just a corpse but a monster. Undeterred, the crew approaches to inspect it, only to discover that it is a monster, which then attacks and kills them both. The police officer fires at the monster, but the bullets have no effect. People inside nearby buildings watch in horror. One stray bullet accidentally hits a girl named Nikki, injuring her. Muriel rushes to help, and Donna urges them to bring Nikki inside. She leads the officer in, who then realizes she's responsible for Nikki's injury. Muriel begins trying to remove the bullet to save Nikki. Meanwhile, inside the ambulance, Tabitha regains consciousness and wakes Henry. She tells him they're back in the town where she was once trapped. Jim, who's with Boyd, urges him to help rescue his wife from the ambulance. He hurries over, finds his wife, but notices she's handcuffed. Randall runs to his bus to fetch some tools to unlock the handcuffs. As he gathers the tools, monsters begin surrounding the bus. He quickly hands the tools to Boyd and tells him to start the ambulance so they can escape. However, the monsters have taken the ambulance keys. One monster taunts Boyd, saying they'll never be able to save everyone, but then hands him the keys. Randall begins shouting for help, but no one can assist him. Boyd manages to start the ambulance and drives toward the house, where others are gathered. Once inside, Boyd learns that Nikki has been shot. The shooter is revealed to be Officer Acosta. Boyd confronts her, asking how she could do such a thing. She apologizes, saying it was a mistake. Just then, Donna arrives and tells Boyd to calm down. She leads him upstairs, and once they're alone, Donna breaks down, telling Boyd how scared she is, crying heavily as he tries to comfort her. Meanwhile, Tilly sits beside Nathan, who suddenly sees a monster and is terrified, though no one else sees it. Driven by fear, he follows it but soon regains his senses, realizing it was only an illusion. Elsewhere, Ethan and Julie are in their room. Ethan, feeling scared, wonders aloud if their dad will return. Julie reassures him, saying he'll definitely come back. Ethan admits he's afraid and asks, "What's really going on here? Are you scared too?" Julie confesses that she is, and adds that she doesn't even know how all of this started. Ethan tries to comfort her, saying, "I'll protect you. There's no need to be scared." We then return to Boyd with Donna, where he berates himself, saying, "I left Randall alone there. This is all my fault, and I'll never forgive myself." The scene then shifts to Tabitha with Jim, as she begins to explain about the man who arrived with her. Henry, Victor's father, is also a long-time resident of this town. Victor's late mother, Miranda, had foreseen these events and left behind a series of paintings. Tabitha mentions visiting Henry's house, where she saw Miranda's paintings. Remarkably, they depicted all of them together. Jim listens, stunned by the revelation. Meanwhile, we shift to Nikki. Surrounded by others, her condition worsens as she starts coughing up blood. Muriel tries to help but lacks the necessary medical supplies, and Nikki tragically passes away. The group is saddened by Nikki's death, and her body is moved to a different room. Fatima and Ellis are there, and Fatima expresses her need for some time alone. Ellis understands, telling her, "If you need anything, just let me know." After everyone leaves, Fatima is left alone with Nikki's body. She begins observing it closely and, unexpectedly, draws blood from Nikki, even tasting it, as if she finds it appealing. This strange act hints that the baby Fatima carries might not be ordinary. Meanwhile, Donna and Boyd are sharing a drink. Through the window, Randall's body lies outside. Suddenly, Randall stirs and regains consciousness, revealing he's still alive, but there's no one around to help him. With this suspenseful twist, the episode ends. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for watching.